NATO, what does it stand for? North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Why the North Atlantic? Why the North Atlantic? Why not the South Atlantic? Let's have a look at the map. I just saw a notification about the spiking of gas prices, as you would expect. Now, what would I do if I were a European leader? It seems obvious. Let us pretend I am Prime Minister of the European nation that I am in. It would be words to the effect of telling the Americans to fuck off and that Europe has its own unique geopolitical interests and commercial interests and political interests even, because nothing is served by pissing everybody off with rising prices already, plus rising energy prices. It makes no sense. But why doesn't Boris say these things? I mean, obviously, look at what the EU are sending. It's artillery and weapons. You heard Diana talk about it yesterday, and Diana's saying, "Oh, but Germany's been so feeble; it's only sending 500 helmets." This is obviously a field day for the, well, what you would call the defense industry, right? What a euphemism for, well, warmongering armaments manufacturers, eh? Wikipedia helpfully provides us with a map of member states. It's not in the southern hemisphere, right? Of course it isn't, because Russia ain't there. So Russia is encircled. Let's have a look at NATO map. And who were the original signatories? NATO constitutes a system of collective security whereby its independent member states, its vassal states, its US vassal states, agree to mutual defense in response to an attack by any external enemy. Right, so who do you think they are thinking of when they talk about an external enemy? It's basically anyone that they think, or anyone they don't like. They'll just pretend that they're about to be attacked by that person, and that nation, and then they can do whatever they like to say what they do, what they claim to be defensive measures, but which are really acts of military aggression against countries that, well, are obviously too small to be aggressive, such as Iraq or Libya. So basically, according to the Wikipedia map, I've gone to the NATO website, but it's not done in a way that it's meant to be maximally informative. So basically, it's, America and Canada on one side of the Atlantic, and then Originally, all the countries with coasts that face the Atlantic, the North Atlantic. So that would be Portugal, that would be Spain and France and Britain. Um, oh, I see that Ireland is not part of NATO. Ireland refuses to be part of NATO because, well, I guess they can't afford to spend all that money on armaments, and they're too sensible to do that. Ireland, NATO, is it? Yeah, so it's talking about Ireland NATO relations rather than. So Ireland is said to have a formal relationship since 1999, when Ireland joined as member of the NATO Partnership of Peace. So Ireland is not a full NATO member due to its traditional policy of military neutrality. Yeah, it's just telling the Americans and the British to fuck off. Okay, well, I learned something new. So it's all about Russia. So Western nations are pretending that Russia is about to attack them. But why? What has happened to disrupt things since the end of the Cold War? And when did the Cold War actually end? Fall of the Berlin Wall, right? At the end, well, at the dissolution of the Soviet Union, when the Russians gave up communism. Shall we remind ourselves what happened to the Soviet Union that caused it to dissolve? So here it says, the dissolution of the Soviet Union 1988 to 1991 was a process of internal political, economic, and ethnic disintegration within the USSR, which resulted in the end of its existence as a sovereign state. Oh dear, oh dear. So it was pretty weak, and basically America and its vassal states took advantage of Russia's weakness and got everyone to join NATO, and Russia was just helpless to do anything about the collapse of the Eastern Bloc. And so Russia has been weak, so what's the point of saber rattling against an obviously weak country that has suffered internal collapse? You know, we know it's suffered internal collapse because it's no longer the Soviet Union. And then after the Soviet Union collapsed, you know, all these well, how many independent states arose from the breakup of the Soviet Union? I'm not even sure. Apparently, 8 republics joined Belarus and Ukraine. So 10. So basically, 10 different bits of the Soviet Union left the Soviet Union, or the territory known as the Soviet Union, and yeah, so it's a sign of Russian weakness. And then the Baltic states, which were kind of buffer states. Let's have a look at the Baltic states. No, they're basically Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. They're called the Baltic nations because they back onto the Baltic Sea, and the peoples are people in Estonia basically are mostly Finnic, and well, they're called Baltic people, the people in Latvia and Lithuania. But they were part of the Russian Empire. So Russia has been weak, and I don't think even when it was the Soviet Union that it was planning to attack anybody. It was really America that was going around flexing its muscles, invading Vietnam, invading Korea. History will show which country has been the more aggressive. Yes, I know about the Cuban Missile Crisis, but we also know that the Russians backed down. Yes, Amanda, you like neutral countries. What do you think about the Swiss? Okay, now, what was the next thing I was going to say about NATO? So really, it was all about, oh, the Soviets might nuke us or something, which is actually crazy. I mean, why would they? They already have their hands full, the Soviets, trying to govern their country, which they failed to do. Okay, so we're now at the revolutions of 1989 in Europe, leading to a strategic re-evaluation of NATO's purpose, nature, tasks, and focus on that continent. So in October 1990, Germany was reunited. The Warsaw Pact collapsed. So the Warsaw Pact was the Iron Curtain. It was a collective defense treaty signed in Warsaw, Poland, between the Soviet Union and 7 other Eastern Bloc socialist republics of Central and Eastern Europe. So which ones would they be? Um, okay, I don't think I'm on the right entry. But I am a bit vague about the Warsaw Pact. I think it includes the Warsaw Pact was created in reaction to the integration of West Germany into NATO. I mean, obviously, the Russians would be worried that, a neighbor so close to them is obviously for America that has, well, nuked 2 Japanese cities for, well, maybe not very good reasons. Anyway, the Warsaw Pact invaded Czechoslovakia with the participation of all the pacts except Albania and Romania. And so Albania was sort of kind of semi-detached. But anyway, what I'm saying is that we don't necessarily know what's good for us, and sometimes we find ourselves in bad company. And I'm afraid Europeans are in bad company, and they are enthralled to the military industrial complex. I mean, obviously, each of them would have manufacturers of armaments who would be clapping their hands in delight at the thought of having to sell a few more arms because, well, America's just good for business if you make arms. So any neutral, impartial examination of history since the Second World War would tell you that the Soviet Union, they invaded Afghanistan. Why did they invade Afghanistan? Let's look that up. As far as I know, they haven't really invaded anyone else. They might have interfered in Africa, but then everybody does in one way or another. So the Iron Curtain was a political boundary dividing Europe into separate areas from the end of World War II in 1945 until the Cold War in 1991. The term symbolizes the efforts by the Soviet Union to block itself and its satellite states from open contact with the West and its allied states. So they included Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, and the USSR. But of course, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and USSR have since ceased to exist. Countries that made up the USSR were Russia, Belarus, Latvia, Ukraine, Estonia, Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Lithuania, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan. It's all a bit complicated, isn't it? And you can understand how most people would not be interested in all this. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so 15 countries made up the USSR, which were Russia, Belarus, Latvia, Ukraine, Estonia, Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Lithuania, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan. It's not listed in alphabetical order, but well, at least I'm familiarizing myself with the names of these countries. But what's very clear is that Russia has been weak, which is why it has been encircled. It doesn't even have a buffer state anymore. It lost control of its buffer states, and the buffer states were the countries I have just mentioned to you that were part of the Iron Curtain, and then it formed the Warsaw Pact because it got nervous about the fall of the Berlin Wall. So the history of Russia has been that of weakness, which is why America has been able to, well, throw its weight around and behave as if it owned the world. And America has been going around, invading countries, bombing countries, shaking its fist at Russia, shaking its fist at Iran, shaking its fist at Russia. But it's, the the saying, the saying, crying out in pain as it strikes you comes to mind. So let's have another look at the purposes of NATO. NATO constitutes a system of collective security whereby its independent member states agree to mutual defense in response to an attack by any external party. The NATO headquarters are located in Brussels, Belgium, while the headquarters of Allied Command Operations is near Mons, Belgium. Ooh, the Belgians are always friendly with whichever empire there exists in the world, and I think that is part of their national psyche. I was there, and I remember a Belgian guide who was enormously proud of the role Belgium played in all these different empires. You know, the Habsburgs, the um, oh, I've forgotten. Let's have a look at all the empires that the Belgians are so proud to belong to. I mean, it is a geopolitical consequence of being right smack in the middle of Europe, right? And and also, you know, it's like whenever the European countries want a war, they like to fight it on Belgian territory. So I guess over time it said, well, if you're going to fight your wars on our territory, you have to give us a say on the matter. I mean, there's nothing special about Belgium. It's only a little country and a divided little country at that, with the Flemish and the French speaking, okay, the Dutch speaking Flemish and the French speaking Walloons, is it? Well, they don't much like each other, but I guess, you know, for the glory of being Belgian, they still agree to live together as a nation state. So yes, the Habsburgs controlled Belgium. In fact, the Habsburg Emperor Charles V was born in Belgium. So what you will find peculiar about the Belgians is that they're just very proud to be part of this or that, you know, extinct European empire. And you know, if the biggest one going is the Americans, they wanted to be part of it, and they got their way because the headquarters of NATO are, well, in Belgium. The most recent member state to be added to NATO was North Macedonia on 27th March 2020. Actually, I don't know anything about North Macedonia. I always thought it was. Oh, God. It's got a bit of a complicated history. I'm not going to read it to you, but it was um, one of the successor states of Yugoslavia and is a landlocked country bordering with Kosovo, Serbia and Bulgaria, Greece and Albania. So I guess it has strategic I guess if you're fighting a war, these borders would be helpful perhaps for military purposes. The Macedonians are a South Slavic people. They're mostly Albanians, who are 25% of the population. Okay. NATO currently recognizes Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, and Ukraine as aspiring members. Yeah, yes, Bosnia and Herzegovina, they kind of started the First World War, didn't they? I just remember some, kept popping up when I was learning European history when I was a schoolgirl. Now, what was the role of Bosnia Herzegovina in previous European wars? Let's have a look. Is this all very boring for you? I'm just doing it because, well, I feel I should understand the situation. It's often informally known as Bosnia. Its capital, right, the capital and largest city is Sarajevo, yes, where the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, which started the First World War. So it's not entirely landlocked. Bosnia and Herzegovina borders Serbia to the east, Montenegro to the southeast, and Croatia to the north and southwest. It is not entirely landlocked. So well, Croatia is lovely, and of course it's access to the sea that makes it attractive to the Americans. So Bosnia and Herzegovina was annexed to the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, and then in the interwar period it was part of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. After World War II, it was granted full republic status in the newly formed Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. In 1992, following the breakup of Yugoslavia, the republic proclaimed independence. This was followed by the Bosnian War, which lasted until late 1995 and was brought to a close with the signing of the Dayton Agreement. Anyway, we know that the population of these countries are mixed. But they were okay under the Turks because the Turks were using the Quran. The Quran contains the rules for an imperial religion, and all these different peoples seem to think that life was fair enough under the Turks, and it was only when it was annexed to the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, which wasn't Muslim, that things started to go wrong. And now things are going wrong again because it ain't Muslim. Very interesting. I am learning as I explain these things to you. Let's carry on about NATO and its purposes. An additional 20 countries participate in NATO's Partnership for Peace program. I don't think it's Partnership for Peace, is it? With 15 other countries involved in institutionalized dialogue programs, the combined military spending of all NATO members in 2020 constituted over 57% of the global nominal total. 57% more than, well, so China and Iran and Russia, who are rival empires to the American empire, together, three of them didn't even come up with half the global nominal total of GDP spent on military spending. Members agreed that their aim is to reach or maintain the target defense spending of at least 2% of their GDP by 2024. Well, you can imagine how much the military industrial complex love NATO and wanted to expand and expand and expand until it takes over the whole world. And Russia is in its way. I think we already know what's going on here. I don't need to belabor the point, do I? I see that Joe is yawning and snoozing, but he still can't resist me, even as he yawns and snoozes. Well, I think I've explained to you the nature and purpose of NATO, have I not? And maybe you understand a little bit more of geopolitics and the national characteristic of Belgium. And now you also know why things went wrong when, well, all these countries that I mentioned, North Macedonia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, they were fine under Turkish rule until the Austro-Hungarian Empire annexed them, and then they all started becoming unhappy and assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, and caused the First World War. So that's yet another sign that Christianity is kaput. It's just not fair enough. And when it's not fair enough, people start acting up, committing acts of terrorism and assassination and causing world wars. Is this what you want? You know the solution. You know the only rational and moral solution, don't you, Joe? Snoozing away. Not everyone will forget what I say in a matter of minutes, because I will remember. I will remember all these new facts about NATO and geopolitics that I am learning about even as I explain it to you. And the most important thing that we have learned today, isn't it, boys and girls, is that the Balkans were fine when they were Muslim and only started two world wars. Well, they started the First World War, and the Second World War is a continuation of the First World War. But to avoid war, you basically have to have rules that are fair enough, so people don't act up and assassinate, leaders and stuff. So I think we already know that Christianity is kaput, and what has gone on in the stream is me further explaining to you why Christianity is kaput under the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Thank you for your attention. Joe, it doesn't matter if I pray or not, or whether I'm Muslim or not. I'm saying The law of the land should be in harmony with Quranic principles because that works, because it's fair enough. And there are rules of international relations in the Quran too, and obviously different nations should adhere to that. And then we will have fewer wars and lower energy prices and, better government. What's wrong with that? So, how's your love life, Joe? You Do you have enough of a love life to be a married father? I don't think so. I don't think so. That's why you're always hanging around me, pretending to be bored when you are, well, obviously attracted to me like a fly to fly paper.